Right, at the beginning of each race, so we get an information from the race director in the race director's notes. Inside that race director's notes is a pit lane map specific for TV journalists and photographers. There is a red line across that. Here we are, look, where we cannot go across. This is the Parc Ferme image here. So we cannot go across where the pit wall is and where the red line is. Now, if we just take it off for just a second, this is we also get this on this Saturday night. It's just been seen. We get a long document list, and this is the post-race interview and podium ceremony procedure. So basically we read through it. It usually tells us who's doing the driver interviews. It's useful for the teams to know what to do. It's useful as broadcasters to know who's doing the interview. So I can say, let's go down to Naomi Schiff. She's talking with the top three, or David Coulthard, whatever. And inside this, it tells us where everyone needs to be, how the drivers need to be weighed, what the procedure will be for the trophy. So winning driver, medal for the winning driver, constructors, second and third, then the music, Carmen playing, blah, blah, blah. Inside that document is this. Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew. Where's it gone? I've lost the little image. Here it is. Thank you. Right, this image as well. This is the complete information of what the teams get and all the journalists as well. This is where you are supposed to be standing. Photographers' waiting area. That is where they wait on the final lap of the race. Once the last car has crossed the line, they will then be released into Parc Ferme. You can see a little fence there, the black line with the FIA and F1 logos around it. That gets erected for Parc Ferme, and it shuts off between the FIA garage, number one, and race control, and in front of the podium, and where the top three go. So the FIA scales, where all drivers must go, is located inside the FIA garage. They'll get through left on the fence on the left-hand side. The second and third driver finish behind, and the race winner goes through into where the TV people are and everything as well, and the photographers are behind that fence. As you can see, the remaining finishers parking alongside the fast lane as well, just in front of the photographers. That gets gated off. That's how it's supposed to go. What didn't happen today was, because of the confusion as well, in terms of the fact is they released people from the waiting area on the second to last lap. It meant that when Esteban Ocon came into the pit lane, this fence was already erected and the photographers were already in position. Now, you can see where the pit wall is, and the photographers are lined up in the fast lane. So when Ocon came in, the photographers were there because they were allowed to be. So it was an absolutely dangerous situation that should never happen. We could have honestly seen people killed here. Absolutely terrible. We can take that graphic away now as well. Thank you very much, behind the scenes, because we've got the decision on this, and it's just come through on Parc Ferme. The FIA summoned the FIA themselves to the stewards, and they given fact. Persons blocking the fast lane in the pit lane on the final lap of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix while the pit lane remained open. And that is a breach of Article 12.2.1H and 12.3.1 of the International Sporting Code. The FIA have fined themselves, basically. Here's the decision. The stewards heard from the FIA representatives and determined that the relevant representations took steps to set up the Parc Ferme area, and also permitted media and other personnel to gather in the start of the pit lane and the pit wall during the last lap of the race, while the pit lane was open and before the final pit stop of Esteban Ocon, car 31. We noted that it was not unusual for the representations to be allowed such persons into the pit lane just before the end of the race, in the usual course of preparation, Parc Ferme and the podium ceremony. However, in this case, there was one driver that had to pit in the last lap, and this created a very dangerous situation for all those that were in the pit lane at the time. We considered that it was fortunate there was no serious consequences on account of what happened today. We stressed that the requirements of ensuring a safe and orderly event are paramount. This was acknowledged by the FIA team. We walked through the relevant procedures and protocol with the FIA regulations, similar to what I've just done for you here on the Grid Network, including FOM, that's the Formula Management Team, and the teams and the FIA. So the media, the FOM media, the teams, and the FIA all got briefed on this to ensure that this situation does not occur again. The FIA representations expressed their regret at what happened and assured us that they would do so in time for the next events. Basically, not do it before the end of the race. So effectively, what we got from that is the FIA haven't fined anybody, and they're not going to fine themselves because there's no one to fine. they're not going to reprimand anyone because they can't reprimand themselves because that would be a breach of guidelines of themselves. That would have to be an internal procedure. The stewards can't do it. So basically, what's going to happen now is the old procedure is back in place. No one's allowed in the pit lane until the last cars cross the checkered flag, because we saw drivers coming to the pit lane on the last lap all the time. The F2 race, the sprint, ended inside the pit lane thanks to the crash at turn 1. And Ed points out, saying, to me, this is F1 prioritizing sponsors and photographic angles over safety. By the way, Josh, stewards are independent from the FIA and are not marking their own homework. That's true, but the FIA have their own set of stewards from this season as well from Formula One, because they've got their own system in Geneva fact-checking everything. So actually this year they have to be integral to the FIA. The driver steward is the only one that isn't permanent. Everyone else is permanent on that team. That's new for this year after the Michael Masi situation a couple of years ago. For Formula E and every other series, that remains the same, where they're not linked to the FIA, they're independent. But it's sort of been revolved around Formula One because Motorsport World does. So that's my rant over, and hopefully that gives you a little bit more information on everything that happened with Esteban Ocon today.